You guys have to check out. So welcome, Megan.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you for having me.
Yes, for
Yes.
sure. So why don't we dive in? How did you get interested in helping women with hormone health?
Absolutely. As with most of us here, I think I had my own health journey that brought me here. So I was, for 10 years, I was working in the corporate world as a mechanical engineer, and things were going along just great, I thought, until I had a baby. And so I had never really had any health challenges, luckily, growing up. So it was just everything went smoothly. So when things go smoothly, you're not used to that whole going into the doctor and really it's just like, maybe you go in once a year or I don't even know, however often. So when after I had my child, it was later on postpartum. So more like the 9 month beyond like a year when she was a year old. So it was a little bit out of the range of like immediate postpartum so it was a little bit overlooked as I would go into my conventional doctor and be like, I feel miserable,
Mhm.
and all my lab work said I was fine. So I got the, you're fine, your thyroid's fine, you're not overweight, it's been a year since you had a baby, just it's probably just going to work its way out. So I, of course, at first that made me feel crazy, right? Because you know in your gut that you don't feel well, and the one source that I had at the time to kind of help me feel better was saying I was fine. So I said, well, I don't think I feel fine. At that point, I had started having panic attacks, which I never had. Just like I remember lying on the floor on a little mattress with my 1 year old, just being like, please don't wake up. Cause I was just full body panic.
Yeah.
And I was like, I do not know how I will deal with my child. And just so fatigued, extreme fatigue, to the point that I would have done anything to not go into my job. I was like, could I just break an arm, or how could I get a leave of absence and just not go in there? So brushing my teeth at night, that was a huge win, right? Just little things. And I luckily, started to dig and found an amazing clinical nutritionist I was in San Diego at the time, and found the whole world of holistic health, and that there are functional labs, and that were actual imbalances going on. And I got to see, my hormone levels on paper, and I got to see my gut level, my gut profile, and the dysbiosis on paper, and my neurotransmitters and everything. I was just ecstatic to see all the imbalances, because I was like, oh, thank God, there's
Oh,
something.
that right,
There's
right.
something to do, which is
Mhm.
how most of the women we work with feel as well. It's not this scary, like, oh no, something's wrong. It's like, oh great, there's something to work on. And that was the beginning of just discovering that this was even a field. And about a year into that, I was like, I can't believe this is even a job. I want to do this. So
Mhm.
really quickly shifted careers, and here I am.
That's awesome.
That is
So
awesome.
let's talk about our thoughts, because this is, I think, the really big thing that we wanted you to talk about today, because we love this. So talk to us about, how do our thoughts and beliefs affect our health?
Absolutely. So we started to see patterns, right? I think everybody comes into health in a different space. So maybe they're aware of food first, or maybe they're aware of like, their environment, like what they're putting, like their skincare, or what they're putting
Mhm.
on their body. And it seems that many of us then kind of end up later on realizing that there's like a whole belief system and all these daily thoughts and these things that are a part of health journey, especially if you've been at it for a few years, right? Or if you've had this situation of your doctor or someone saying nothing's wrong, right? And then you start to tell a story of, well, what's wrong with me? And why can't anybody help me? And, there's this pattern. And so over time, we started to see that almost, so the longer someone's on the journey and the more they are uh, type A, right? Like they're like, I will
Yeah.
do any diet or any plan. It's almost like kind of giving up the power. The more they were ready to just do anything, which is how I was, and why, same with Dr. Alex, and why we got to where we did. Just kind of like, just please tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Tell me what to eat. Tell me what to take. I'll do anything. And in the process, we started to recognize there were all these underlying just patterns of beliefs and thoughts about being healthy or getting better or what somebody deserves. And the cool thing about the brain, well, the cool can be cool or it can work against you when you don't know this, is that the inputs, like what we tell ourselves, what we look in the mirror and say, hey, you're looking pretty ugly and you're not that smart, right? Whatever you're telling yourself in the mirror, the brain's like, I'm going to go make that thing happen. It's neutral to the brain. It's like, all right, you want ugly and stupid? Like, we'll provide that for you, right? I'll go find that. You want pain? Because you're like, oh, I'm in so much pain. I have chronic disease. Like the words and the thought that we're repeatedly going back to, your body's like, your unconscious, subconscious mind is just hearing the word as it is. And it's like, she says pain, right? I'll go find pain. Or the person that we've had lots of people like this, they're going into a job every day and on the way to work, they're just thinking or saying out loud, oh my gosh, this commute's going to be the death of me, or I just hate this job, right? These thoughts of like, this is going to be the death of me, death of me, death of me. And then many of them will come to us and realize that they've been telling themselves this, and then they end up with an ulcer or something that actually stops them from going into work because their brain is like, you're telling us we're going to die if you keep going to this place, right? So if we don't make the change consciously, after some period of time, the body's going to step in and be like, I'm here to protect you. So we're going to go ahead and stop you from doing this thing that you keep telling us is not protective and not in your best interest. So the thoughts, I think we often are beating ourselves up. That's the second part of it. There's not only the thought, but then there's like the shame and blame game that comes with it of, well, why am I thinking that? Why am I not good enough? Why do I look this way? How come everybody gets results and I don't? Why can't I find the right practitioner, right? Like the stories. And then on top of that is just the shame of still not being there, right? Still not getting there, not having it figured out. And then when we add the feeling on top of the thought, it just magnifies it. Because anytime there's a strong emotion and a thought, that's when we're really, really securing that into our subconscious.
Wow.
I see that in our practice too. Some people, like, it's like they almost identify with either their symptom or their illness, whatever they've been diagnosed with. And they talk about it so much that it just overwhelms their life. And I think, like you were saying, it's like the symptom, and then add the power of the mind on top of it being, it is real, but add your thought process on top of that, and it amplifies it so much, and it's just so overwhelming to them. And we try to, get people not to do that, because it really makes it, sometimes you can't, even when their body gets better, they've conditioned themselves to believe or to feel this way or to talk about it so much that they don't really get better. They don't really feel better.
Right, because they've been looking for it. And there is, right, all of us here love functional lab work. So you want to look for it and you want to have the data. And then once you have it, where you go with that makes all the difference.
Right.
Because there's right, every time, imagine you go out and you buy a new car, and then you look around and everybody on the road has that car, right? Or the new bag or whatever. We've all experienced that. So same thing, it's that reticular activating system. As soon as you're focused on your disease, or I had mold in my home, and I experienced this to such a huge degree of because when there's pain or where there's a problem, we get in tunnel vision. We go into fight or flight, right? And when we're in fight or flight, to protect us, we're going to have a small area we're focused on. So in that tunnel vision, all I see is like mold, or whatever my problem is. And then all you can attract into your life is mold, and whatever your problem is. The answer might be just to the right of your vision, right? Like the perfect practitioner or some, synchronistic event that would really help you move through this is right there, but you can't see it because you're in the fight or flight. Whereas like we have our clients actually use they're opening up to peripheral, like asking them to just stand and get their awareness as far as they can and like take a deep breath, because it's very different what you will see. You just won't even recognize that the solution's there when you're focused on the problem. So it's like gathering the data and then quickly shifting to what can we do. And I think the words, one of the first things we work with people on is the words that they say to themselves and others. I don't know if either of you have done or seen like the DNRS, the limbic system retraining program, Annie Hopper. Yeah.
Literally had it right over here a minute ago.
So in that program, when you join it, she has a letter that she says, "Hi, friends, please send this to your friends and family," that says like, "Don't ask me how I'm doing. Don't ask me how is your program going? How is your disease?" Right? Like the focus is just not on that anymore. We're completely shifting out of, and I love that she does that. It's like, not only are you not going to focus on it, the people in your life are conditioned to ask you, "How are you doing?" Like, "Oh, are you feeling sick today?" If you've been in a place for a while, then they're conditioned. And after a while, you might actually be getting better. But these people are now conditioning you back into your old space because it's comfortable. It might not be the best place to be, but that's become the pattern. And then you go, "Am I feeling bad today?" And even just that question, you're immediately like, your body language will change, your shoulders will go down, your breathing, like you're kind of thinking about it. And then you're like, maybe I don't feel well. And then you're going back into that state. So getting the people around you on board, but then also your own statement. So we'll say, instead of identifying with a disease, like I have anxiety, or Dr. Alex, like she had chronic pain, is we'll teach women to just say, I am currently dealing with anxious thoughts, right?
I love that.
I'm currently dealing with depressed thoughts. I am currently experiencing rashes on my arms, or currently my autoimmune system is really trying to protect me so hard that it's freaking out, right? Like this currently part tells us in our brain, and this is temporary. This can be temporary. Like these are thoughts that are coming and going. This is not my anxiety, my autoimmunity, my disease. As soon as you say it becomes your identity.
It becomes you. You own it, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Bring in more of it. You can only see it. I just experienced this so firsthand with the mold situation in my home, because it became just such a narrow focus. I couldn't actually get better until I got pulled out of that. Dr. Alex said to me like, "Hey, Megan, remember how there is no one way to health," right? Because I was like, well, I have to find the perfect practitioner and the perfect detox plan. And, this mold was not something she or I had dealt with before. So I was like research mode, right? All the things. And then knowing a little bit too much to the point where then it
and it really freaks you out.
That's a real thing, right?
real thing. And I was a little crazy there for a few months. I was just like, oh my God, these stories are horrible. I'm never going to get better. It's like, how do you ever find it? It's invisible, right? It's just this, which I think now people have kind of dealt with the virus, right? Like it's invisible, and what do you do? And the more you focus on it, the worse you feel, the worse everything gets. So at that point, we made a deal that would stick with one plan, right? We're not saying ever don't do something about it. Right. It's not like, oh, just don't test and don't ever take a supplement. Right. Find a plan though. And I made a 6-month pact with her. This was the one plan. I was going to get off the internet. I was going to get off social media as far as researching, stick with the one plan. And I even had on my phone a reminder every day that came up that said, "Let it go, Megan." Like, let it go. So a reminder of just like, you got this. And that was when I got better. I mean, it was totally a shift in obviously time, right? Like I supported my detox pathways and all that. At the same time, there's a good chance that there could still be mold in part of our house. Like I just don't, I don't think it will affect me anymore, because I've been able to reprogram my brain to say, we can actually handle this.
So the brain retraining programs are so powerful.
Super powerful.
Let's talk a little bit about the role of stress in our cycles.
Absolutely. So speaking of thoughts, right?
Yes.
So I think it's so powerful. So programmed in our society, it feels like, your cycle is this horrible thing, right? You'll see the commercials and it's like, just take Midol and power through, right? It's always somebody in a suit, like just still leading the meeting. And we really believe that this cycle, the female cycle, can be a superpower if you're tapped into what's happening when, because then you know what your body's trying to do, what your brain's trying to do. And again, you're not beating yourself up for, why am I a little bit tired today, right? You know why you're a little bit tired today, and you can actually block that off and take 2 or 3 days to rest. So especially now where a lot of us are working from home, or like you maybe couldn't necessarily do that today. People are like, that's great, Megan. I'm just going to tell my boss I'm not productive today. I'm on day 2 of my cycle. So I know that's not always, you can't always use it. And you can, if you know you have to do things that are not in a great time with your cycle, then you can buffer more time after for recovery. Like you can plan around this. But what we see happening is in this very first, so week 1, like your day you get your period, and then the first week is a time where our brain is really, really nitpicky of everything around us, but more pointed towards us. So kind of like, why do I look like that? Why is my house messy? Why did I say that? Right? We're kind of inwardly hard on ourselves. Also, and it's amazing time in that right and left hemisphere of the brain for females is super interconnected. So we have coherence. So it's kind of like all the data we've been grabbing for the last month, we've been pulling in, right? Like when this person says this, I feel like this, or when I eat this, I feel like this. You're kind of pulling in data. And then you can take it together and put together the analytical side with the intuitive side, and then have a new understanding of what's best for your body. This only works if you're going to slow down and listen, right? This only works if you take a little time to just like sit, be quiet, meditate, whatever you have to actually tap into that. If you're up talking and reading and just continue on life, then you won't get this amazing download. But if you can stop, and Dr. Alex is the master at this, because she just really follows what her body is telling her. And so she'll maybe not do a whole bunch of anything for a few weeks. I mean, I shouldn't say that she's like working as a full-time doctor and has a business, but I mean, as far as like creatively, creating something, she'll follow this, and then she'll create like a whole program or a book in 2 or 3 days. It just flows through her because she's always following when her body is at its best.
I love that.
Which is why she can be a full-time doctor. So connecting, then you're basically setting yourself up for that month. You're setting yourself up in the beginning of the month to then optimize, to use this month. It's kind of like a new start. It's like New Year's, it's just your period. And then you get like, what do I actually want to focus on in this next 30 days? So if you can stop, write it down, and then just watch when you're really hard on yourself, because this is kind of a nitpicky time. And then we lead into the next phase, like week 2. We're just going to assume it's 4 weeks, but if somebody has a longer cycle, you're just splitting it up into 4, ovulation being the middle. So the second week leading up to ovulation is really when people are starting to get going, like they're feeling good and they're wanting to plan and create and make things happen. Same with the next week, whereas the 4th week, like right before our cycle, obviously everyone is aware that this can be this time of PMS symptoms. And this is often when we start to get really irritated with everybody else. So this is the, why did you leave that out versus why is it messy here? And why did she say that? And this is a reflection often, even though we seem like we're irritated with everybody else, it's usually a reflection of us and something we don't like about us. So when we take this time during that week to actually look around and be like, okay, well, the last 3 months I was also irritated with this thing during the cycle. So maybe there's a change that needs to happen. Right. Maybe it's not this person, or maybe there needs to be a new boundary with this person. Or oftentimes it's just really something deep down, like we believe like, well, if I were good enough, then that person would treat me differently. Or if I were trying hard enough, then my health would be good by now, right? So then there's some belief we have about ourselves, which is some limiting decision we made at some point that's kind of keeping us being really hard on ourselves. We can be really, really hard on ourselves. So we just use all those phases to really a lot of self-inquiry to try to figure out like, what are these repeat patterns? Because when we can get a hold of our thoughts, like thoughts and beliefs are one of the stressors that we actually have a good amount of control over. Whereas environmental stressors like the mold in the air or viral load or metals, like you don't have quite as much control over. There's lots of things we can do. And our thoughts are something that can decide in any moment whether we're in fight or flight or not. And whether we're going to spend the majority of our time just in this stress state and therefore, not rest and digest, not making our hormones, not ovulating. The brain's like, this person's freaked out. This person thinks it's not safe. We're not going to make a baby. So that's where the thought piece, especially on top of a health journey, because it's really easy to attach then to like, this isn't working. This is taking too long. Why do I have to do all this stuff? Right. All the beliefs that can come around working on your health. Sometimes when those beliefs are so strong, it can be more detrimental than the thing you're doing.
100%.
Yeah, so true. So let's talk about the parasympathetic nervous system. So why don't you explain what that is and some tools that we can use to activate it? I love this topic, by the way.
Yes.
So fun. So, we kind of have we've got the gas. The sympathetic system is the gas and the parasympathetic is the brakes. And I know you all both know Chris Kresser's ADAPT training. And I remember at one point he said, the key to everything is just being in parasympathetic a little more often than sympathetic. I was like, thanks, Chris. Like easy, right? Easier said than done. And just knowing how important that is. So that allows you to say like, what activities am I doing on a daily basis, right? There's the things we have to do. And then there's the things that we choose to like get worked up about, or the things that we choose to indulge in that we know are a little bit stressful. And then there's the time, like let's say we're sleeping 8 hours, right? How can we get 4 more hours of parasympathetic if we're going half of 24 hours. So that's 4 hours of your waking time to be in rest and digest is a good amount of time when we're used to like getting up and going and immediately like grabbing the phone, immediately jumping into full like go mode, maybe making meals for the kids or whatever you're doing. So it's like, how can we work getting into parasympathetic into our day? We're huge fans of things that can be done while you're doing other things. Like while I'm washing the dishes, I can be doing some deep breathing. I can be breathing in. So, and as long as your exhale is longer than your inhale, then we kind of tap into that parasympathetic. So I have an app on my phone. It's called Breathe Plus. It's like breathe and then the plus sign. It just counts it out for you. So you can set it 5 seconds in and 7 seconds out. It kind of has calm music too. So it puts you in that state. But and reminders on my phone have been huge for me until you get into the habit of something. I know when I was working in the corporate office, I knew I was stressed out. Like I knew my body was not doing well. So I would set a reminder for every hour and it just popped up and it said like, take a walk and a breath. And I would just do one loop around the building. It wasn't very big, but just fresh air, take a loop. And then I would just sit in like 10 breaths. And then at that point too, it was always a reminder of like how my body was, because when we're in that, our body is telling our brain whether we're in fight or flight or not. So can we like sit up, relax our shoulders? Like, are we actually breathing while we're working? Because we can get in that, like, focused on the cell phone, focused on the computer, just immediate. And then another one, Dr. Alex had some really fun, just things that you can tap into the parasympathetic while you're sitting at work. So for example, like you can make figure eights with your eyes. So she'll just have kind of like make big circles with your eyes and you'll feel it. I totally feel a difference when I do this. It's just like, and you don't have to use your fingers if there's people around, if you just want to try to, kind of do it on your own. But once we're activating the eyes in that way, then it's telling the signal all the way down. Like we can relax, we can chill out, we can be in rest and digest. And the same thing with the hips. So like hip circles, if you're at home, like something to move that energy. And I think we have so much stored energy and so much stored emotion throughout our body for a lot of us that at first this might not feel as comfortable. You might be like, man, why am I emotional, or what's coming out? And then after a while it'll start to be addictive because you want to be in that state. You want to feel like your body's like, like just so much calmer.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's lots of different. Do you want more? Is that good? I'm a big fan of tapping. Like tapping is one of my favorites. So EFT, there's like the tapping solution has an app where there's just free ones you can tap along with, especially one of the things that I used to do a lot of, which I didn't realize what was happening. I did a lot of venting to friends, right? So somebody pisses you off or you're irritated with your health or whatever it is. I'm like, just think like, who's the first person you want to call? It's always somebody who you know is gonna be like, yeah, you're right. Like they suck. You're right. They were wrong. So you call somebody, you vent, you tell them all this bad stuff. And they're like, yeah, exactly. You should be mad. And then in the process, I always felt better. So I thought, oh, that seems like a good thing to do, right? I feel better, got it off my chest. And at the same time, you've basically secured whatever you've just vented to them. You've secured that into your subconscious mind because you called them in this state, your heightened emotion, you're explaining it. They're like, yes, I agree with you. And you didn't necessarily move it out of the body. You actually secured it in whatever that belief was. Like, people are mean. My health journey is always going to be hard, whatever the story was. So when Alex or I are upset about something or in a bad place and we want to vent to each other, we've made an agreement, even just on the phone, where while we're venting, because my therapist made me do this, actually be tapping through the EFT tapping points while you're explaining or telling the story, because then you're actually moving the energy, right? It's all the acupuncture points on the body. You're moving the energy out instead of just venting and securing it in. And just that little change has made a huge difference. And we don't complain all that much to each other anymore anyway, because we're like, well, I don't really want you to have that energy. And
right.
I love that.
Now that immediately I'm like, okay, I already know why I'm set up about this. This is just my belief. It has nothing to do with them. Like you can quickly turn it around. I'm a big fan of Byron Katie. Do either of you like Byron Katie?
Yeah.
I just had the honor of interviewing her on our podcast.
Very cool.
And she's just this amazing. Like you can just feel her energy, and this is very cool. But the 4 questions and the turnaround, thework.com for anybody who doesn't know. She just has that process is a really quick way to turn any thought around or question anything you're irritated with. And now I do it in my head. My husband comes home, he's like, you didn't wash the dishes, right? And I'm like, he shouldn't have done that. And then I'm like, okay,
let me run through them questions real quick.
Okay, he should have done that. I'm like, okay, he should have done that. He had a long day too. And then it's like, I shouldn't have done that. I'm like, okay, I shouldn't have gotten angry. Like really quickly, you can, when you've done it enough, you can just turn the thoughts around. And then I have no need to call Alex because I've worked it out internally.
Exactly. Why don't you talk a little bit how we can use our cycle as our superpower?
Yeah. So once we kind of understand, I was going to say the flow, but yes, the flow of things.
We got you, the flow.
Just came out naturally. Once you understand kind of what's happening when, then we can we can really schedule around it. So we can schedule those, especially for women who have businesses or, you have an important meeting or something. You can, when you have a choice, you can kind of schedule it in that second week of your cycle when you're going to be in this powerful state, and then scheduling off time and downtime. And then I know, obviously everybody hears, like, you talk all about histamine, right, Dr. Becky? So for those of you who have this, during ovulation time where you're feeling pretty miserable, or like right before your cycle, we've had women notice things like during ovulation that if they are having any kind of alcohol or any kind of sugar or even social media during this time, I've had people be like, I am so much more triggered by other humans during this time. And so once they start to track it, like, hey, how about, I have lots of clients, 3 days in the middle of the cycle, they shut it down, they delete it off their phone. 3 days before their period, they shut it down, they delete off their phone. And all of a sudden they're like, I don't know, I guess social media is not that triggering, right? Wow. There's certain times of the month where it can be, you get a lot more like FOMO, missing out on things, but then also this like comparisonitis can really come up during that time. Everything can be triggering, and it sends you on the spiral when you're already potentially in a little bit imbalanced place. It then sends you on a thought spiral of, right, like all the bad stuff on top of it. So being proactive, like if you've kind of written out what happens in yours, since we're all different, like some people feel amazing during ovulation, right? So since we're all different, you can kind of follow your pattern. Again, like do this a month or two, and then like let's not track forever unless you need to for other reasons. But this is the same thing of when we focus on our problem continuously forever, then it always seems like a problem. But having that base knowledge of like, these are the good times for me, schedule them. These are times where I'm just a little bit, I need more energy. I need more downtime. Like really, if anything, really, really scheduling in that downtime, I think has been amazing for us. We're way more productive. Ideas just like flow through us. We plan when we're going to launch our programs around our cycle. For us, it's just been a huge shift in how we show up, how we're able to show up.
That's
It's
really
really
cool.
true.
Yeah.
It really does work.
Yeah.
I love this. Well, Megan, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah.
Yes. So I'd say Instagram is the best, most interactive spot. So at zesty_ginger. But then also we have our 4-phase cycle podcast, which we've had Dr. Becky on there two times, I think.
2 times, yeah.
And for those of you who are really interested in the cycle piece of it, like what's happening when, because obviously there's a lot of more specific details that go into that. If you go all the way back to season 1, episode 1 of the 4-phase cycle podcast, Dr. Alex did a 24 series of pod classes. They're short, like 10 to 12 minutes, but just kind of walks through every part of the cycle and what's happening when, and when it's best to do each thing. So I'd say those, I mean, zestyginger.com is our website, but those two are the best places to come find us. And we're happy to answer any questions. So please reach out.
Yes. Thank you
thanks
so
for
much.
coming on, Megan. You were awesome. This was so
Yes.
great. People really need to hear this.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Guys, don't forget to leave a review, and don't forget to mention this specific podcast if you loved this podcast, because we like to know what you guys like. So thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great day. Thanks, Megan.